Hey guys, you got the Dude Man here with you, and I'm going to do a video today regarding recording the bass guitar. I have some tips, tricks, secrets, and hacks, if you want to call them. But I got some great ideas that you might want to try. Some of these things I use on a regular basis. Some I haven't tried yet, but I'm probably gonna sooner or later because they sound very interesting to me, and I think you'll like them. I'm going to do a few videos. The other videos are going to be more focused on different bass players, their particular tones, what sounds great, and we'll go from there, okay? So, but if you only watch one video, today is the video to watch because you're going to get some great ideas out of this, okay? So a lot of people ask me, should I record the bass direct or should I mic the bass? And for me, I prefer to go direct. It's fast, it's easy, and I can get a great sound from going direct. I don't have to mess around with mic and speakers and all that stuff. Although I'm not going to knock it because a lot of famous players, great players who I very much respect, use that technique of miking the bass speaker cabinet. So I'll tell you a few good pointers on that as well. One of the best engineers I ever worked with, his name is Skip DeRupa, and he ran Windmark Recording, and I think it was Windmark Recording or Windmark Sound, whatever it was, Windmark Recording I think it was, in Virginia Beach, and it was a $1 million studio, or if not more, and it was a really nice place. And while I was there, he taught me to use a D box that he preferred, and it's called the Countryman DI, and this is it right here, and this thing works great. What I like about it, it's metal, it's bulletproof, right? And if you look in here, you got amp input, instrument input, and then you can choose between pickup, input, and speaker. Nothing groundbreaking there, but you know, good to have. You got a ground switch, 3-position ground switch, and a mic input here. Very basic, right? Here you have a Phillips head screw. When you take that screw out, this whole inside slides out, and there's a battery inside, a 9-volt battery. And I think that's the key to having a good sound, why this gives you such a good sound, because now you have an active circuit in there. And when I record on Pro Tools with this, the wave is like going across the whole channel, you know? So I'm getting a big signal, and it's nice and even, like it's compressed or something. I don't think it has a compressor in it. Maybe that's part of the secret of how they get it to work so good, sound so good. But I get a great sound from that, and it's a nice, even, solid signal. So that's what I've been using, and thanks to Skip for that. That Windmark recording, that was later sold to Pharrell Williams, and I believe he still owns it to this day. Not sure about that, but that was a great thing. Another great DI that you can try is the pt.1. It's made in New York City. Very popular. Just the original DI. It's another basic DI, but it's got a great sound to it. That one adds more like a tube sound. Gets a little bit of that old tube sound going, which is great for recording. If you listen to a few recordings from Ronnie James Dio, his bass player used that, and he got some great results. I can't even guarantee it. Just by hearing the sound, I would bet on it that he used the pt.1 DI on one of his recordings there, one of his biggest hits. Anyway, so recording live. Some people have asked me how I got such a good sound recording live when I was playing with Backseat Driver. That's my former jam band. And what I did was I go direct out of the amp, and we feed that signal to a digital audio recorder, and then from there, that's usually a mobile unit when we record here at our studio, and then the engineer will take that those files and take it to his home studio and mix it down. So that's how we did that. And here's one of the amps I would use. This is a Gensler. Well, I'll go on this side. This is a Gensler, Benz 6.2 shuttle amp. What I like about these is it's got a tube preamp, and it's real basic controls that are easy to quickly zip in a good sound. And I don't usually record with just this live. I'll have a 410 under this, and I get a great sound. This is a 112, by the way. And that gives me enough volume to keep up with my loud guitar player, and if the drummer's getting a little crazy, I can keep up with him. I probably used my Gensler. It's a Gens 900 watt head with 2 speaker cabinets, including a 410 and another cab. And that's what I use most of the time, but it's the same thing as this, just more power. And it's got that tube pre in there, and I think that tube pre really warms up the sound when you're recording live. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'll tell you, if you listen to Backseat Driver, you'll hear some pretty cool bass tones in there. We'll bring that up in another video so you can hear. I'll give you some samples in another video of that. Let's talk about miking the amps, miking the speaker cabs rather. Miking the speaker cabinets. Here's another tip I learned from Skipper. He recommended these. This is an AKG D112. It's a kick drum mic, okay? But it's good for pretty much any bass frequency application. It's made for the kick drum, but they sound great on bass speakers too. So he recommended that if you're going to record with a microphone, use that. And here's another interesting thing that I found out that Eddie Van Halen did when they were recording Van Halen. He would have the engineer put a mic on the bass player's cabinet, but not just the front, but he'd have a second mic on the back port to really get that deep frequency. And if you ever put your hand near the back port of a bass speaker cabinet, excuse me, those things are really pumping out air. The speaker's facing the other way, but it's going back and forth like this. It's still pushing a lot of air out and probably more bass frequencies. So that's a trick from Eddie Van Halen. And I only learned that from reading a story on his son, Wolfgang, who is a bass player, and he said that's what his dad used to do. So I saw that in Bass Player magazine, and I said, wow, that's pretty cool. And so I thought I'd share that with you. Now, next I want to tell you in-depth story about one of my all-time favorite bass players. One of my all-time favorite bass guitar tones is from Paul McCartney. All right? He's an awesome bass player, obviously. But before I start with this, I just wanted to tell you it would be great if you would like the video and subscribe at the end, and that helps me, and I would appreciate it very much. But I'm going to try and rip through this little piece here that I have. This is some pretty detailed information on what the engineer did with Paul's sound recording and everything. This is taken from a book called Behind the Glass by Howard Massey. So if you want to pick that up, you might get some really good information. I actually haven't got it, but I made a copy of this thing because I was always a fan of Paul's sound, and I was curious how he got it. So check this out. A sonic innovator who invented a number of recording techniques, Abbey Road studio engineer Jeff Emmerich crafted Paul McCartney's big, bold bass sound on Beatles albums such as Revolver, Sgt. Pepper's, and Magical Mystery Tour. So they were asking him how he did all this stuff, and he says, I used a tube C12 mic. I've never heard of those, so they probably don't make them anymore, but it's what he used. And he put it 6 to 8 feet away from the speaker cabinet. and he put the mic's pickup pattern on a figure 8. He also used an Altec compressor. Okay, so what's happening when he's got it 6 to 8 feet away from the speaker? He's picking up room sound, right? So he's getting a big room sound. You know, the sound's bouncing around the room and coming back and making that big sound. And I'm sure that figure 8 pattern had something to do with it. The Altec compressor, I'm sure I've heard of those, but I'm no geek when it comes to gear. You know, I don't know all the different gear. That's something an engineer who's been around a while probably knows about. So they're asking the engineer more question. They said, so you didn't take a DI signal from the bass? He said, no, never, ever. I'd never DI Paul's bass. I guess back then that was a no-no. So they asked him, do you remember what his bass amp was? And he said it was probably a Vox. Now, Vox amps, I'm not familiar with. I've never played through them. They were like, back in the 60s, they were the bomb, you know, I guess. But I never played through one. And I played through, I played with guitar players who used them for their guitar amps. And they were fine, but never tried a bass amp. So I can't say good or bad on that. But I think there's probably more modern amps that you'd prefer to use nowadays. Anyway, was there a lot of bass punch-ins? And he said, oh no, it was a performance. So they went straight through, no punch-ins. You know, it was hard to do back then. Okay, so he continues on. Although he changed from the Hofner to a Rickenbacker around that time, I don't think it was so much the bass guitar he used. I think it was having the mic on the figure 8. With the studio empty, you could actually hear a little bit of the room ambiance around the bass, which seemed to help. At one time on Revolver, I was trying to get an extra definition on the bass, so I put a little chamber reverb on it, just a touch. Paul always detected it and hated it. So 9 times out of 10, I ended up taking it off. Occasionally it got through. So that's the fine-tuned ears of Paul McCartney. And I've tried a Hofner bass and a Rickenbacker, and I couldn't get either one to sound good. I mean, the Hofner, I don't know how Paul did it. You know, you hear about these guitar players and bass players. How do they get their sound? It's with the hands. It's not so much the guitar. It's not so much the amp or whatever. It's their technique, the way they play. You know, it's from years of doing it. And so that's, you know, that has a lot to do with it, I'm sure. Although when I hear Rickenbacker basses recorded from Paul, Geddy Lee, you know, some of the most famous bass players, there's a lot of bass players, Lemmy Kilmister, you know, Motorhead, who get a great sound with the Rickenbacker. So, but I tried it. I tried one like a long time ago, and to me it was kind of played clunky. But I don't know, maybe it was not a good one. So anyway, getting back to this, they're talking to the engineer a little further, and they say the sound you crafted transformed the bass from a supporting rhythm instrument into a lead instrument. And he replies, it surely did, unbelievably so. It's a compressed sound, but it's not over-compressed. It's not squashed. That was the Altec compressor. The Fairchild compressor couldn't take the bass signal because the attack time was too fast. The other thing I used to do when I was mixing, and previous Beatles engineer Norman Smith taught me this, was that the last instrument that you bring in is the bass. So, at least through Sgt. Pepper, everything was mixed without hearing the bass. I used to bring everything to -2 on the VU meter and then bring in the bass and make it go to 0. So that meant that the bass was 2 dB louder than anything on the record. It was way out in front, the loudest thing. On Rain from Revolver, I may have compressed the bass 2 or even 3 times just to give it no dynamic range whatsoever and get it way out in front. That's some pretty cool stuff. I mean, you just don't think all this stuff nowadays. You know, everything is recorded differently than back then when they were only working with 4 tracks. Sgt. Pepper's was a 4-track masterpiece. So the EQ on the board was just treble and bass with no selectable frequencies. So I had very little control in the control room. So what he's saying there is the actual mixing console back then only had bass and treble, not this big row of different frequencies and sweepable stuff and all that. So that's awesome. Cool stuff, man. I love it. I love it. You know, I hope you got something out of this, because I mean, you know, I get it. Hopefully you get it. But that's it, guys. I hope you did get something out of this, and I hope you enjoyed it. So that's it for today. And like I said, like and subscribe. And hasta la vista, baby. Catch you on the flip.